I had a wonderful life, a loving wife, a daughter and a roof over my head. I was truly blessed until one day my wife came to our house with her lover. It was painful, they humiliated me and I didn't know what to do. I know you've heard this story a million times before. I believed my life was flawless until that fateful day. That man was me, Ryan Moss. Our relationship heated up quickly and we tied the knot a month after she graduated. I finished my degree in engineering and landed a satisfying job with a prestigious national engineering firm. Tiffany pursued her career as well and landed a job as a paralegal at a law firm. It wasn't until Jenny started kindergarten that Tiffany returned to her job at the law firm. I shouldn't have seen this coming, but I was blinded by my wife's love for me. I believed she loved me as deeply as I loved her. I believed she loved me as deeply as I loved her. In hindsight, all the warning signs were very clear. Tiffany began to dress more revealingly. Our intimacy diminished from frequent to non-existent. She became increasingly distant when asked about her long hours at work, and when I confronted her about her lack of quality family time together, I didn't notice any overt romantic gestures between Tiffany and her boss. They were both discreet, but it was all hidden from my sight. I dropped Jenny off at my parents' house with the intention of going home to have dinner and a film alone with Tiffany, but as I walked into the kitchen, Tiffany came downstairs dressed to the nines in a short skirt and heels. I exclaimed, "Where are we going?" Tiffany smiled, which disturbed me. "We're not going anywhere, I'm going out, but not with you." "What are you talking about?" "I have a date. This is just the beginning. We're going to establish new rules. Starting today my boss is picking me up to go out. I'm not going home. We're going to follow the rules of the city center." "What the hell are you talking about?" "I'm going out for a bit and I'll be back on Sunday. If you think I'm going to put up with this, you're wrong. If you walk out that door, don't come back without Ryan. I'm going to come back to our home. We'll still be married. I'll still be living here. And so will you. It's a shame that Jenny's father is broken in prison." Her words left me speechless. Just as I was about to address her, the doorbell rang. Tiffany rushed to the door and motioned for her boss to come in. "What's his reaction?" "Mr. Moss, it looks like we have some things to talk about. I'd like to give you a piece of my mind. You can try, but from the looks of you, you'll probably take a few punches in front of me." "You can try, but from the looks of it, you're probably gonna take a few punches from my driver and pass out, and before nightfall, you'll find yourself behind bars. And when your spouse agrees to be my personal assistant, she takes on the added responsibility of, yes, I mean part-time work in bed. And I've been seeing your wife for the last 6 months, but she's grown tired of our clandestine meetings, and the relationship between the two of you will change, and as a result, you'll be able to take on the responsibility of being my personal assistant, and I'll be able to take on the responsibility of being my personal assistant. My personal assistant, she will be available as needed to meet my professional and personal requirements. Mr. Miss, you will still be Tiffany's husband. Your role as a spouse and parent will remain the same with one exception." Her words left me speechless. Just as I was about to say something to her, the doorbell rang and Tiffany rushed to the door and in came her boss. What was his reaction? "Well, Mr. Moss, it seems we have some things to discuss. I'd like to give you a bit of credit. You can try, but from the looks of you, you're probably going to take a few punches before my chauffeur intervenes, and by the end of the night you'll be unconscious." "Okay, now we can talk like civilized people. When your spouse agrees to be my personal assistant with the added responsibility that yes, I have a part-time job in bed and I've been dating your wife for the last 6 months, but she's tired of our clandestine meetings and things will change between you two, you'll still be Tiffany's husband. Your roles as a spouse and as a parent will remain unchanged with one exception, and I'll make sure that Tiffany and wife, you will be facing Stan." He leaned in close to my ear and said that she was great at certain services. I was still in shock as I watched my wife leave with her boss, her boyfriend. She didn't come home on Saturday or Sunday morning, and she wasn't there on Sunday when I went to pick up Jenny, and I forced myself to hold back the tears to pick her up and take her home, and when Jenny asked me where my mom was, she almost broke my heart. Sunday night Tiffany finally came home and she found me asleep in the guest room. Luckily she didn't come in. I don't know if I would have been able to keep my composure if she had. She kissed Jenny goodbye and then tried to kiss me, but I turned away and left. She spat. "When you say we, do you mean my problem? You spent the weekend with your boss and that's the problem you're talking about? He loves the special creamer I bring to work, and he can't wait to share his signature creamer with you. Don't be crass, Ryan. Stan's very persuasive. Do you remember when I kept saying I didn't like sushi? This is the first time he's ever convinced me to eat sushi and the first time we've ever been intimate. I'm sorry, Ryan. But it's true, he's even agreed to make me his personal assistant. It's a win-win for both of us, and Stan says you can come back to him. It's a win-win for both of us, and Stan says you can come back to him, but with a few conditions. Oh my god, I can't wait to hear about the conditions. Do you honestly believe this nonsense? In your world, once Stan ends things with you, I'm supposed to grow old with you, and then what? And then what? Wait until old Stan decides he wants to impregnate you and then have someone else raise the baby. Tiffany hangs her head in shame. Damn it, you're already pregnant? Tiffany walked to the top of the stairs and turned back to me and said, I'll be waiting for you in our bed, but once I stop taking the pill, I won't be with you anymore. Over the next week I investigated Stan and it became clear that he had the power and influence he boasted of. I sought legal advice from a divorce lawyer. I was told that divorce would lead to my ruin. The lawyer, who was familiar with Stan Cross, expressed concern that he might fabricate molestation charges against me and divorce became an untenable option. She suggested that I use a hidden voice-activated tape recorder and keep it in Tiffany's purse, which could potentially yield valuable information. Even though the voice recorder seemed like a long shot, I discreetly placed it in Tiffany's purse along with the other pens. After hours of searching, I had a risky idea that was born out of desperation. After a 3-hour drive, I stumbled upon a dimly lit Oriental supply shop that had an old hat, a pair of sunglasses, and a nondescript outfit. Fortunately, when I arrived I found the shop empty, except for an elderly gentleman at the counter who carefully inquired of him about my need for tetrodotoxin and dimethylmercury. His smile widened, but the price was $1,500, cash only, so I guess you must be very cautious. He also had 2 syringes in the bag, which would help administer the medication and avoid contact with the skin. Tetrodotoxin and dimethylmercury are both toxic substances associated with marine life, and tetrodotoxin is derived from pufferfish and blue-ringed octopus, and if made properly, my research has shown that both dimethylmercury and tetrodotoxin build up in the human body until it's too late. The best part of my plan was that Tiffany would handle the delivery of the poisons for me. She'd kept the damn bottle of special creamer at home until a few months ago when she'd needed to replace the bottle at work. I think what she meant was that it was her special creamer and that Stan's creamer was dairy-free and didn't need to be refrigerated. Tiffany kept her stash of creamer in the pantry. I decided to start with the first bottle of tetrodotoxin because I didn't want to risk exposure to dimethylmercury, which I'd read in a book could poison you on contact. After slowly injecting the liquid, I checked the bottles for signs of tampering, and once satisfied, I repeated the process for all 11 bottles with a nervous hand. Tiffany's behavior made my decision much easier. It was a Thursday night and we had arranged for Thursday to be sushi night. Tiffany and Stan often worked late and they loved sushi, a true symbol of intimacy. I had dinner with Jenny and tucked her into bed as usual. I retreated to my man cave. Tiffany came down the stairs with a provocative look on her face. If you wish for intimacy, you have 1 month left. My wife actually allowed me to be intimate with her before she and her boss got pregnant with a child. I'd be upstairs in our bed. We hadn't been intimate in a long time, she said smugly, climbing the stairs. You forget what real intimacy is, but considering my situation, I considered my actions a form of self-defense. She and her boyfriend threatened me with the thing I hold most dear, my daughter, and to a lesser extent my freedom. A week later I found only 9 bottles of cream left in the cream box. It took another month for her to show the first symptoms. I watched her closely whenever she was at home. She seemed paler, but throughout dinner her hands caught my attention. It was clear that her nervous system had been affected by the toxins in the cream, causing it to fail. Are you feeling unwell, Tiff? I've tried to show genuine concern. I don't know, my fingers feel numb, you know, like you put your hand on your hand and it falls asleep. It's been like that for about a week now, and I'm feeling a bit short of breath too. It's probably nothing serious, it sounds like stress. Any new challenges at work that are making you feel stressed or upset? Tiffany's symptoms became more pronounced: body aches, shortness of breath, pale skin. It was a Thursday evening and Tiffany came straight home from work, and when she walked in the door, out of the blue, "What are you doing here?" Tiffany looked at me quizzically. "You know that big project you and Stan were supposed to start?" It's going to be hard to finish the job if you're both sick. Tiffany leaned in close to me and replied in a low voice, Jenny, don't be rude in front of our daughter. I'm going to go lie down for a while after we eat. I walked Jenny back to her room to get ready for bed. Passing through our bedroom, I heard Tiffany vomit. She growled, I'm not pregnant yet. I just went off the pill last week. No, my wife died when she took that bastard's job and she was replaced by a woman I don't respect. If you think you're going to get any respect or even kindness, you're wrong. I turned and left the bathroom. When I dropped Jenny off at daycare on Friday, she wasn't awake, and even though I was supposed to check on her, I didn't. My phone rang and it was from Tiffany. What's wrong with you? Do you really want me to take you to the hospital to see your lover? Please Ryan, it's not a joke. They said he might not make it for fear of arousing suspicion. I decided to take the afternoon off and go home. Tiffany looked terrible. I helped her into the car and drove to the hospital, where we met her boss's wife and one of the other senior partners, Larry Masters. Mr. Masters, I need to know how he's doing. I need to see him. Masters signaled for her to get out of the way and I followed close behind. You. It looks bad. It's not good. He's paralyzed on his left side. The doctors have mentioned organ failure. They're not sure of the cause yet, but if they don't intervene soon, he may not make it through the weekend. Tiffany bursts into tears and pleads, Mr. Masters, I have to see him. Can you distract his wife? I accompanied my wife to visit her lover. Stan looked terrible, the left side of his face drooping, awake but unable to speak. Tiffany rushed to his side while I stood guard by the door. Tiffany sobbed even harder until a nurse came in and urged her to leave. The nurse assisted my wife out of the room, leaving Stan and me. Stan's eyes went wide when he recognized me. He tried to speak but couldn't. Stan, before you die, I want you to understand that I didn't listen to your advice, that I was unfaithful, that I rejected your new love affair. Don't worry, I'll tell your wife after you die about your deception. Before you die, know that I planned this. There's nothing you can do. As I walked out of the ward, the machine connected to Stan started to sound an alarm. The nurses and doctors rushed and they managed to keep Stan alive through the weekend, but he died early on Monday. After picking Jenny up from nursery on Monday, her health deteriorated further. I came home to find Tiffany lying in bed, confirming the loss of her lover. Despite her frail body, her grief was still palpable. No, Tiff, I'm not going to be intoxicated. I'm not going to pretend to mourn his death. He ruined our marriage. He deserved it. Our marriage wasn't ruined. I can't believe that you're so uncaring towards Stan the way that I feel about him. My feelings for him didn't diminish my love for you. It was just a means of improving our financial situation. Her condition deteriorated to the point that I had to take her to hospital on Friday. On Saturday morning, the doctor said to me, Mr. Moss, your wife's health is failing. I was trying to hold back a laugh. Yes, she and her partner have been eating a lot of sushi for the past few months. Partner, the doctor asked in disbelief. I'm sure you know Stan Cross. Just last Monday he passed away at this hospital. Last Monday, he died in this hospital. He and my wife had been having an affair. The doctor took me to her hospital room. Tiffany was hooked up to all sorts of machines and looked very weak. Her eyes lit up a little when I went in, and every week I was signaled to come closer to her. She was having a hard time breathing and talking. Tiffany signaled for me to lean in. I'm so sorry, Ryan. I understand now how much I've hurt you. The doctors tell me I don't have much time left and I need to hear you forgive me before I leave. I whisper in her ear and find her wearing a smile as I begin to speak. My beloved wife, when we exchanged vows, I promised to love you forever. I can't forgive you for what you've done to me and to our family. May you and the love of your life suffer in hell. A single tear rolled down her cheek and I stood up and left. An alarm sounded in Tiffany's room. An hour later, she was pronounced dead and told Jenny that her mother wouldn't be coming home. My tears were for her, not Tiffany. The doctor's conclusion was that both Stan and Tiffany had been victims of the poisonous sushi. Turning Tiffany's body over to the funeral home meant the end of the autopsy and further investigations. No police officers ever came to see me for questioning. I even retrieved the half-full bottle of cream from Tiffany's office while collecting her belongings. My first stop was the home of Stan's widow, Georgia Moss, and one might ask, why Stan's wife when he was already dead? I switched on my tape recorder. Mrs. Cross, I'm here to discuss your husband and my wife with you. She interrupted. You can stop there, Mr. Moss. I am aware of my husband's affair with your wife. Their affair was very obvious, and while it may not have been his first, it was certainly his last. I'm sorry to hear about what happened to your wife, but, as you can see, I also lost my husband. Thank you, Mrs. Cross. And I would like to clarify one thing. You knew that your husband had lured my wife away and turned her against me and my daughter, yet you took no action. You are as much to blame as he is. Just a moment, Mr. Moss. I had nothing to do with my husband's behavior, and I think we disagree on that point, Mrs. Cross. From my point of view, if you had intervened with your husband, he might not have had the temerity to pursue my wife, and perhaps my children would still have a mother today knowing that you were aware of the situation, and that I would have a much stronger case to make when I seek to recover from his estate for the pain and suffering that he has inflicted on my family. Fully. At first, my attorneys suspected that they would oppose us without Stan, but that changed when I produced recordings of Stan's conversations with his partner, Larry Masters, and it became a challenge to maintain civility with Tiffany while my plan was in motion. Larry, who claimed to have contacts with law enforcement and the judiciary, offered to assist in the implementation of the plan. He threatened to use these connections to dismantle me if I did not comply. We took advantage of this despite my attorney's warnings about the admissibility of the recordings in court. They all thought we were going to discuss Tiffany's life insurance policy, which the insurance company had been slow to settle. The managing partner, John Hager, rose from his seat and said, "Mr. Moss, our sincere condolences for your loss." I pocketed the check, "But that's not why we're here. We're here to give your firm an opportunity to settle this troubling matter before we take legal action against you individually and against your firm. Mr. Moss, we're not going to sit around here and listen to your wild accusations. Mr. Haig, we're free to go, but I can assure you that my so-called allegations are true and I have evidence to support them. Mr. Moss, with your permission, I need to speak to my partner in private." 30 minutes later, Hager returned alone. My attorney told me that Masters would probably lose his law license and that perhaps the rest of your team would face the same fate. Hager asked for 2 days to discuss my offer with his partner. My attorney interjected and said, "You have 2 days to agree to it or we're going to make it all public." 2 days later my attorney contacted me to tell me that they'd agreed to $5 million. I accepted the terms and received the funds. I signed a non-disclosure agreement regarding the behavior of Mr. Cross and his company towards me and my family. As Tiffany predicted, her affair had made our family financially secure, and now I had to start looking for someone to fill the role of my wife and mother of my children. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please consider bookmarking and subscribing too. If you haven't already, please share your thoughts on the incident in the comments below.